Hi, I'm Gavin Willis, and I grew up in the north part of Whatcom County in the Nooksack watershed. And I'm always interested in learning more about this place that I call home. Watershed management plays a big role in our environment here in Whatcom County, from providing healthy habitat to our salmon, to curbing devastating flooding, and protecting the rich soils that allow our agricultural community to thrive. Over the years, water flow through the Nooksack River has changed a lot. Some natural changes, and some man-made. Now, teams of people are working together to solve these problems, either by individual minor improvements or long-term holistic approaches. I'm here at Duffner Ditch, where a floodgate improvement project is underway. We'll speak with key stakeholders and learn how this project can improve conditions for salmon populations, decrease flooding for landowners, and improve flows in the Nooksack watershed. Let's get started. So Mike, we're out here southeast of Linden on your farm. Thanks for having me out here.
You bet.
I mean, it's a beautiful place.
Thank you.
Looks like there's going to be a big construction project coming up here.
Yep, we're pretty excited about that. We're going to put in a new floodgate, which will help us with drainage in the spring for flooding events, and will mitigate some risks that we have with our crops.
So you have a current system in place that just isn't working?
Yeah, the system's been in there over 25 years. It's too small, and the gates are old and they leak.
When I was out here in January, the flooding I saw was pretty extensive. It seems like these fields were totally underwater.
Yes.
What causes all that flooding?
So it's usually a large rain event, or it's a snow melt off of Baker that comes down and it fills up the Nooksack River. That then backs up into Fish Trap Creek and Bertrand Creek, which is right here. And that closes the floodgates, and you still have water coming from South Linden that comes down Duffner Ditch, and this is kind of where it just boils over into the fields. Winter floods, we're used to those, and they happen almost every year, but it's the spring floods that are risky for us for planting crops. You know, we want to get in the fields in April and get corn and grass, and then also potatoes are planted then. And once you plant, you do not want a flooding event, otherwise the seed will rot in the ground.
So if you do have a flooding event in the spring after you've planted, then what can you do about that?
So several years ago, the Duffner Ditch District bought a pump, and then we put a tractor in front of that, and we will actually pump water until the Nooksack River drops down in its level. What
basically happens then is that the floodgates are forced closed by high water, and everything coming down here can't drain, and so you have to manually pump it out.
Yes, yes. If we had a flooding event, it might take a week or 10 days for the water to get off. And the new system, we're hoping that in 2 or 3 or 4 days that the water gets off.
Great, and then that'll help protect your seed.
Yes.
All right, Mike, well, thanks for having me out here.
You bet.
I'm really excited to see how this project turns out.
Yeah, me too.
Frank, thanks for coming out today.
Well, happy to be here.
So I just wrapped up talking to Mike, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about some of the other projects that have happened in this area, and I figured you were the guy to talk to.
Yeah, I've been working in this area almost 20 years, and there's been a lot going on.
Well, how about we go check some of it out?
Okay.
You work with the Whatcom Conservation District.
Yes.
What type of work does the Conservation District all do?
We help landowners with their conservation choices, and our focus now is water quality and water quantity, like floods, and also habitat restoration. This was a farm field prior to 2007.
Started out as little saplings, and now we've got full mature trees.
The issue at the time was that there was a levee along Bertrand Creek over here that was right on the shore of the creek, and come flood season, Nooksack River water would surge up and blow out those levees on an annual basis. So the idea that was engineered was to set the levees back, giving the river and the stream a little bit more room to work in a less dynamic way. And that also, salmon habitat-wise, opened up almost 22 acres for reforestation.
So I guess the farmers gave up some of their land, and in exchange, they get better flood control, so they have better access to their land.
Exactly.
You can hear birds flying around. I'm sure there's all kinds of insects.
That's the biggest change we see when you go from from field or fallow field to forest is that suddenly there's songbirds again, and we can really hear them today.
All right, well, how about we go check out the mouth of the Bertrand Vein right around the corner here
I'd love to.
and see what it looks like now. So you were talking earlier about floodwaters wiping out the levees, and this is where that used to happen, right?
Yes, we're standing right where Bertrand Creek flows into the Nooksack River. So when the Nooksack River floods, it surges up Bertrand Creek, and now that whole forest we just walked through, that's before it gets to those levees. So those trees, they slow down the floodwaters and help protect that levee when it finally gets there. In addition, a really cool benefit is that each one of those trees provides a little flood refuge as well for the juvenile fish that might get swept up there in the floodwater.
So those juvenile salmon then, they need protection, I guess, from the fast-moving floodwaters?
Exactly. Anything they can do to get out of that is of a huge benefit to them.
Well, I'm really excited then to see the impacts that the new floodgate is going to have. It sounds like it fits in really well with all the other projects that have happened over the last 2 or 3 decades even, and it's going to be prime habitat for salmon.
It is. I'm excited. We've been wanting to replace these floodgates for years now, and we've had buy-in and we've got funding, so it's actually going to happen next month.
Awesome. All that hard work finally paying off. We're standing here on the culvert for the floodgate, and it looks pretty complicated. How does this thing work?
The old system was completely passive, where the gate was normally closed, but then when the water built up in Duffner, it would force the gate open and leave, which isn't nearly as fish friendly.
So in that case, if there wasn't enough water flow, the old gate would automatically close and prevent salmon from getting into all this habitat behind us.
Correct, but this system will be way more accessible for the fish.
Can you talk about the scale of the project? It seems like a pretty big system we're dealing with here.
It's 120 feet long with a custom head wall on the downstream side. The culvert's able to handle a 100-year flood event and flow that water out of here. And then it's also, on the other end of the scale, it flows water slow enough to allow fish passage. So you can't have water rushing through for the fish. That's a little bit challenging for them to navigate if it's flowing too fast.
I was out here this past winter and there was some pretty significant flooding in this whole area. How does this new floodgate address that problem?
Even though the gate itself weighs about 1,200 pounds, it's designed and built so delicately that it doesn't take much to open it, so it won't take near as much head on the Duffner system to force that gate to open. With a larger surface area for water to flow in, it'll drain faster. And that's really beneficial to the farmers.
What has your experience been like? Because you're working for the fish, you're interacting with the farmers and the landowners. Is there competition there?
I don't think of it as competition. We look for projects that are not mutually exclusive. That yes, you lose a little bit of farmland here, but you better protect the remaining farmland. So that's a win-win. You look for projects that yes, improve fish habitat, but also provide better flood conveyance or something like that.
We see it as a partnership between the farming community, the county, and tribal and fisheries. That's what's so neat about this project is it's a lot of different groups coming together and we all have benefits. The farmers have drainage benefits. There's more fish passage that will happen.
Sounds like that's going to be a win-win then.
Yes.
Without landowners like Mike stepping up and volunteering their time, efforts, and land, watershed improvements and conservation projects like we've seen in this episode would never be able to happen. Some grants and other funding are available to help offset construction and other costs, but landowners still have to put up a lot of their own resources to make this happen. So, the projects often happen piecemeal, here and there when funding is available. While still incredibly important, these one-at-a-time projects aren't always the most efficient way to improve our watersheds. Join us next time when we take a look at what's possible when many different stakeholders take a holistic approach to improving our floodplains. We'll see you then.